What's up, Read My Mind Radio family? I missed you. Happy 2020 to you all. Bit of a slow start for me, but can't hold a brother back. So much of what's going on in the world today makes it more challenging to find that hope and optimism.
There's no need to fear.
Read My Mind Radio is here. Let's get this pop. Read
My mind.
Read
My mind.
Creativity is one of the most powerful healing. It's one of the most connective things that you can ever do to get to know who you really are.
Getting to know who we really are is a big part of our early lives, especially from our teenage years and on through college. For Victoria Clare, an artist specializing in sculpture, vision loss added to the process.
I just passed my driving test. I'd never had a lesson at night, ever. Not any reason for that. It was just my lessons were never booked for that time. When I passed my driving test, I jumped in my car, very elated, wanted to go tell my boyfriend at the time that I'd passed my test, and pulled out of my mum and dad's drive, and all of a sudden it became very, very apparent to me that I really shouldn't be driving. I just could not see enough at all, really.
On that ride to her boyfriend's house, she clipped another vehicle and lost her driver's side mirror. Fortunately, no one was hurt. It was enough to prompt her to see an ophthalmologist.
That's when I found out that I was going to go blind.
The diagnosis was retinitis pigmentosa.
My particular retinitis pigmentosa is one of the recessive types, so therefore we have no people in the family that have had it, so I'm literally the start of a chain, if you will. So finding that out as well kind of made me feel like, wow, what a responsibility for me to go be married and have children later on in life. There's going to be a big choice for me at some point in my life, which I was very aware of. However, I went back to college.
College in the UK refers to where many students go for 2 years after completing compulsory schooling at 16 in order to prepare for exams to get into university. You can also take vocational courses in college. While studying graphic design, with plans to move on to university to continue in this field, Victoria just happened to come across a book about sculpture.
I knew when it was time for me to go on to university that graphic design wasn't for me, that sculpture was going to be my future. It was an amazing course. It only had 28 places in the whole of Europe. I was lucky enough to get one of those places. I didn't really consider that perhaps, hold on a second, I may not be able to do this. I just kind of carried on.
For some, that may sound like optimism, positive thinking. Others who have been down this road would probably advise differently. Did you have contact with anyone else who was experiencing vision loss? Anyone who's blind?
No, not at that time. No, I had no contact with anybody like that.
Blind mentors can often help provide guidance, resources, and lend an understanding ear when dealing with all the additional loss that more than often accompanies the vision loss.
I had a lot of people kind of walk out of my life or just feel very awkward around me and didn't know how to handle it. My boyfriend that I was with at the time, we got engaged, and he kind of was really struggling with the sight loss diagnosis, and he actually saw it as too much for him, so the relationship broke down.
His loss.
Yeah.
Victoria soon learned that carrying on would require skills that she didn't have. Living independently in a new town, navigating both in and outdoors.
I didn't realise how simple everyday things would become so difficult for me. I had a hard time at uni for a very short time. I mean, literally, I wasn't there for very long before I decided, look, I can't do this. It's too hard. I left. My lecturers said to me that I was welcome to go back at any time, which was really, really gracious of them, considering it was such a prestigious course. I had a conversation with my parents. They were incredibly supportive. They came and collected me.
Back at home, Victoria says she isolated herself from the world.
And I started drinking. Initially, it was about trying to numb the pain. I just felt like my whole world had shattered into 1,000 pieces. I didn't know how I was going to go forward. I didn't see a future for myself. And then something happened.
To put it simply, Victoria was introduced to possibility. It came in the form of a rehabilitation specialist.
Really lovely lady. She had her work cut out, to be fair with me. I was really super rebellious. I didn't want help from anybody, Don't treat me like a blind person, blah, 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 typical kid.
Soon after meeting, the rehab specialist realized Victoria wasn't going to use a white cane.
I just was not going to use one. I wanted to learn every trick in the trade so I could get away with using one. She started to teach me other things, echolocation, which is still really super useful to me, trailing and just small things like that was getting me by.
Sometimes it's the smallest suggestions that have the greatest results.
She was the one that suggested that maybe I should try some sculpture just for therapeutic reasons. I went out in my dad's shed. I got a big old block of wood, stole some of his chisels, used his mallet and started creating. It was amazing. It turned my world around because it made me realise, okay, I've been diagnosed with this sight loss, but nobody's taken away the skills that I've always had. They're still there.
And remember those skills that she began sharpening in university?
The background and the love was for figurative work. So I created a kind of tabletop size, maybe like 2 feet tall, of a female figure. I called it Her Spirit. That was put into a local gallery and sold. I then kind of returned and created another figurative female figure, which was also sold. My work has changed a lot over the years, but most certainly it was more figurative work back then.
Did it represent something in your life at that time, or what was that all about?
I would say for me, it was more to do with the fact that the course that I had to leave at uni was a figurative sculpture course. So, of course, I was kind of making that connection of wanting to keep the figurative sculpture part of me going, even though I had to walk away from the university.
How much of an influence is blindness, the subject of blindness, not necessarily your adaptations, if there are some, but how much does that play into your sculpting specifically?
Now, a huge amount, because I get inspired by it. For example, it was only 2 years ago that I put on the first sculpture exhibition that was completely in a pitch black gallery. Everybody had to use their other senses to discover what the pieces actually were.
This particular exhibition enabled Victoria to express herself in 3 different ways.
It was to share my personal acceptance of my journey with sight loss. It was to also kind of share sight loss with the general public so that they would have an experience and an understanding of what it feels like. And 3, it was a very strong message to the visual arts, because they really, really need to up their game when it comes to accessible art in galleries, most certainly for visually impaired people. If you walk into a gallery, how do we navigate and involve ourselves in our environment? By feeling. To be told that you can't touch a piece of sculpture, a piece of artwork, you're immediately excluded from enjoying it.
The exhibit, a first of its kind, received national media coverage, and all of the pieces were sold. The result created new opportunities for Victoria, including serving as a Retina UK ambassador.
Raising money to create research and pioneer research for retinal dystrophies, as they say. Public speaking started to grow from there, really. I get to speak at conferences and various events. I'm speaking at the World 2020 Vision. That's in Dublin, and also chairing a panel on another day as well.
The latter is a chance to meet others impacted by vision loss.
There's a connection there. It's something very special.
A big part of her personal journey is creative expression, something Victoria believes can be of help to others adjusting to their own vision loss.
I would recommend anything that will lift somebody's mood, that will connect them to who they are and make them feel that they are enough, and give them self-confidence and self-worth. From sculpture to painting, from dance to music, and anything in between. I would just say creativity is one of the most powerful healing. It's one of the most connective things that you can ever do to get to know who you really are.
Her own creative expression goes beyond sculpture. There's music, which began around the same time as vision loss. Specifically, she began learning guitar from a friend.
Probably one of the things that helped me as I rewind, going back to those dark days, because I would sit when I was alone, and if I was feeling down, I would just play my guitar, just compose. I did find that a real comfort at the time.
About 13 years ago now, she discovered piano.
I used to be working in a school, and this piano was sitting in the hall, never being used, and I would be the only person that would go up and have a tinker, you know. Slowly but surely, I started to think, you know what, this is great, I love it. And I ended up buying that piano off of the school, and it's sitting in my spare room now.
And you're recording your music?
Literally just come out of the studio.
Singing and performing in bands since she was 23 years old. Know You Matter is Victoria's most recent production. It's a message to all those that have self-doubt and serves as a personal reminder that she matters.
Don't deny yourself. You're just as good as anyone else.
She hopes it resonates with others. Know You Matter is available on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, and just about wherever you listen to music.
Shining star. Never forget who you are.
Next up, creatively, and you rapping too?
Working on it. I want to get into a bit of scratching, you know, Tom.
She's serious. She's a hip-hop fan.
I like a lot of hip-hop. I like a lot of dance music. But then I like a lot of singer-songwriter stuff.
Since you said hip-hop, what did you like?
I absolutely love De La Soul. Yeah, they were definitely my favourite, yeah.
The more I think about her art, it makes sense. She takes an existing source, in this case a piece of wood, and crafts it into a whole new thing. That's hip-hop. This past Christmas, Santa brought her a DJ controller, or the modern-day DJ turntables, so who knows what she'll create. I know what you're thinking. Does this woman ever get bored? Well, she has the answer for boredom.
Board sports. When I was 23, a big life change happened for me because I decided to go backpacking with my best friend around the world. Probably the best thing I ever did. I was being faced with beautiful beaches and all the surf community, and I was just thinking, I was sitting there and I was just watching these guys, you know, and these girls just riding these waves, and I just longed to do it. But in my head at that time, the voice was saying, you'll never get to do this, you're going blind, you can't do that.
If this were a movie, we'd cue up the dramatic music. The camera would pan out to the others easily riding the waves, maybe one falling off the board. The scene would move to Victoria slowly looking at a surfboard next to her, and then back out toward the ocean. Sitting on a blanket on the sand, she'd confidently straighten her back, stand, grab that board, and sprint toward the water. Her friends would cheer her on as she paddled out to catch a wave. But this ain't no movie. She privately held on to that desire, like so many of us do.
It wasn't until 2014 that I was actually doing my first solo exhibition, which was a really big 14-piece collection exhibition. It's quite stressful at that time, trying to do everything for it.
That's when her husband had an idea.
Let me teach you how to surf. And that was it. I was hooked.
Once upon a time, she was adamant about not using a white cane. Today, Victoria puts that long white cane to good use.
Skateboarding.
That's her way to expel that bored energy when she can't hit the waves. And of course, where does Victoria go from here? You have a line of skateboards?
Yep, I've got the line of skateboards.
Jeez, you make me tired. I gotta up my life. I'm not doing enough. Come on.
Yeah, they're called Blinded Soul, and they're bespoke solid deck skateboards. When we started surfing, we also taught my nephew to surf, and then I took that one step forward, I made him a surfboard. I did the same for skateboards. I was just so amazed how smooth a ride they are. They're built like in a retro kind of style. They're not built for tricks, but they are definitely built for long distance sort of cruising.
The other day when I was reading on your blog, I was like, man, I think I want to do this. I think I want to try skateboarding. Now, it's been years. I skateboarded as a kid.
Here I am laying in the hospital, bandage from feet to head.
Okay, all jokes aside, I'm going to give that a try. For anyone experiencing vision loss, finding a creative outlet is worth exploring. It's hard because the reality is, for most, these endeavors just don't help pay the rent. But that's not a reason to not pursue your passion or interest. There's levels to this stuff. Find your level and enjoy. The benefits are real. Victoria's pursuit of her own interest in music proved fruitful in ways she probably never expected. You mentioned your husband.
We met through a band that I was in. I was the singer, he was the drummer. He had the same kind of silly sense of humour, I guess, that I've got, and we just had good fun. He would drive me home after rehearsals and stuff. Probably only took a couple of months for me to realise that A, how much I liked him, and B, I had to tell him. I sat in the car with him one night. It was just outside my flat where I was living at the time, and I had to take a very, very deep breath, and I told him. He just hugged me, and I said to him, if this changes things, it's okay. And he was like, no way. I just couldn't imagine it changing anything between us. He's a very, very positive person. He's very optimistic. He supports me in everything I do.
And what's this fine gentleman's name?
This fine gentleman's name is Adam.
You just never know where the pursuit of your interests may lead. Victoria talks about all of her endeavors over on her blog, Beyond Vision.
I want to reach as many people as I can. I want to support as many people as I can, but along the way, I want to share my vulnerability as much as my successes, because I think it's all very well kind of sitting talking about all the wonderful things that you get to do through life, but I think it's more important to share also the vulnerable side of you too, because it makes you more relatable. I really do get quite kind of honest with my blogs. They really do tell a story in themselves. They're raw, they're authentic.
Encouraged to write her own story in the form of a book. First reluctant, Victoria eventually had an idea to help make the task more attainable.
What if I started thinking like the book is like an extended blog? So I got in touch with an editor, Marnie Summerfield-Smith. Lovely lady. She's actually a ghostwriter. And now when I first spoke to her, I was kind of talking in a way that I wanted her to write it. But she was the person that said to me, you got to write this yourself. This is your story. This can't come from me. It's got to come from you. Here I am a year later, and she's now got the version that I've put together, and she's editing.
First of all, I see that you're doing audio blogs, so it's not enough that you're doing all the other stuff. Now you got to come on into audio. Come on, Victoria. Let some other people keep the audio.
No, honestly, do you know what, Tom? It is purely for a selfish reason.
For the record, I actually welcome and promote more of our voices in this space. By now, you can probably tell that Victoria is all about productivity. She's voice recording what she would have once written for the blog. To check out her work and more,
I've got my professional website, which is for the sculpture, and that is www.victoriaclaresculpture.com. And then I've got my advocacy website, victoriaclaire-beyondvision.com, where there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And it's also got a lot of resources and support and that kind of stuff. And that's where the blogs are as well.
Victoria's working on moving her sculpture website to a more accessible platform. You can also find her on Instagram at Victoria Clare Sculpture. That's VICTORIACLARE. Don't forget to go on over to iTunes or wherever you get your music and get her latest single, Know You Matter. Shout out to Victoria Clare for sharing her journey. And shout out to Steph McCoy for making a connect. I'm always hopeful that somehow this podcast finds those who are in a place where many of us once were. That's losing their sight, receiving a diagnosis they never expected, maybe fighting against the idea of using a white cane. It's easy to focus on what's being lost, but as we heard today, the pursuit of those things that bring joy can really help you find what you're seeking. It's just right around the corner. If you like what you heard today, subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Why not tell one or two people about what's taking place here? Let's get this information into the ear holes of those who need it the most. In fact, you know we're about that access here, so it's available for fingertips and eyeballs too, in the form of transcripts, available on readmymind.com. That's R to the E-I-D. Like my last name. Peace.